cliche catchphrases in life that I like to spout. One is, it's as much about who you know as what you know. And the other one is, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And both of these the catchphrases come together in one of my favorite stories to tell. And that's the story of how I got out to one of the most highly secure places on all of Cape Cod, and that's Great Island in West Yarmouth. So flashback to 2011, I had gotten my first book deal for the In My Footsteps, a Cape Cod travel guide book through Schiffer, and I spent a lot of time researching places I wanted to include, and some of them were places I hadn't been, and the idea behind that was I could say, I'm writing a book, and I can put your whatever in the book, and it maybe would be a way to get me in there. Every place that I had to contact for permission all said yes, including Wings Neck Lighthouse, which is in Pocasset, and that's on private property, but the people that run it, that manage it, they gave me permission to go out there and shoot it for the book, and they said, if anyone says anything, you tell them that I said you could go out there, and that was nice. It made the book feel more of a complete Cape Cod. That is until I tried to get out to what was my crown jewel at the time, a spot called Point Gammon Lighthouse at the tip of Great Island in West Yarmouth. Point Gammon is part stone, part wood. It's conical in shape at the bottom, and it was originally built in 1816, and it actually was decommissioned in 1858. So it's been sitting out there just kind of as a reminder of a bygone era for over 150 years. And I'll get more into Point Gammon Lighthouse and its history on its own in a future podcast, but I like to tell this story of how I ended up face-to-face with this lighthouse. Essentially, in 2011 and 2012, I tried a couple of times to contact the Great Island Housing Authority, and I stated my case. I said, I'm writing a book about Cape Cod. I'm going to showcase all these places. I said, I would love to have permission to go out there and just take a few pictures of Point Gammon Lighthouse. He said, you can chaperone me and you can see the photos. I tried to make it real easy on them. The first time I called, they literally said no and hung up. That was my conversation with them. So I tried a second time, and I called up and I stated my case again about the lighthouse. And the response this time was, what lighthouse? Which is funny if you know Cape Cod, if you know the Great Island. If you go to Craigville Beach in Centerville and you look towards the east, you can see Point Gammon Lighthouse out there. It's got to be 60 feet tall or 60 feet above sea level. You can't miss it. So they were really playing it up, just trying to get me to go away, saying there wasn't even a lighthouse out there. My deadline came and passed for the first book. I had to go with what I had. 95 places. It's very comprehensive when it comes to things to see on Cape Cod. But I didn't stop my quest to get out there and get a photo of the lighthouse. I did an interview for Cape Cod magazine, and when they asked me they wanted to meet with me and take a photo of me somewhere that was in the book, and I very strategically suggested Keys Beach in Hyannis, which is, you head south off of Main Street. The reason I chose that spot was because it had the best vantage point of Point Gammon Lighthouse. While we were there taking some photos, it was a winter afternoon, I just casually mentioned, you see that lighthouse back there? And I started telling the story about how it was supposed to be in the book. And they kind of mentioned it in the interview in the magazine, but nothing came of it. I thought that maybe it would guilt Great Island into letting me out there, but it didn't. My next opportunity to get out there came a couple years later, when my mother's second husband, my first stepfather, he had been doing some part-time work at the guard shack to get out to the island. And he had dropped a mention to the people that he worked for that I was interested in getting a photo of the lighthouse. So they agreed, but here was all the catches. First of all, they had to chaperone me, which that's understandable. Second of all, I think they said I could get one photo. And third was I could never show it to anyone, let alone post it on social media. So it would literally be like just my memory of going out there. I would have one photo that I couldn't show anyone. It would be like FBI classified. I kindly turned them down. I said I'd rather not go at all than have that happen. Time passed again until 2016, 5 years ago this month, when I finally got out there. One of my mom's oldest friends, Debbie, she's very well known in the town of Yarmouth. Her kids grew up with my siblings. I spent so much of my high school years down there at her house, hanging especially with her son Rob, who's a couple years younger than me, but we were really tight. Our families were really tight. And she got in touch with me saying that she had a friend that had a house on Great Island. She was selling the house, so people were going out there, and she was selling like an estate sale, selling furniture and such. And she was excited to tell me that she had gotten me a day pass to go out there. So she was already an invited guest of her friend, and then there was an extra day pass for me. So I was going to get to go out to Point Gammon Lighthouse, or at least I thought. We drove down the approach to the guard shack and pulled up, and there's the guard there. Debbie explains the situation. She has a friend that lives out there selling her house. We're going out there, and we might just take a little drive out to the lighthouse because she said, this guy's an author. He just wants a photo of the lighthouse. He's been trying for years. We have a day pass. She showed him the day pass. Even with all of that, he still was hesitant. So he's looking at it like he doesn't want to get in trouble for letting us out there, despite the fact that we have permission, which is just too funny. That's how strict it is. Eventually, he relented and gave us 10 minutes total. So we passed the guard shack, started driving out there. After the guard shack, maybe a couple 100 yards out there, there's another guard shack. This one was empty because it's February. You keep driving past there, and eventually you get to a third layer of security, which is a chain link fence with the keypad on it. It was open because it's February and there's not many people out there. And we kept driving further. It's about 2 miles to the end of the island, but the guard at the first guard shack had said, keep an eye out because there's a man that lives out there, and basically his only job is to look for cars that don't belong. And he said that Debbie was lucky because her car looks like someone's who lives out there, so he was unlikely to call the security. 4 layers of security. We pulled up to the lighthouse. It was like a scene out of a movie. I had a little Fuji FinePix camera, tiny one, and my iPhone 3. And I jumped out and I ran all around. I had 4 or 5 minutes most. And I just started snapping pictures, tons of them. I said, I'll enjoy them later. Just get what you can while you can. I did make sure during my time out there to give the lighthouse a big hug and a kiss. And there's a photo that Debbie took of me kissing the lighthouse, which is one of my favorite photos because it was a harrowing journey to get out just to get pictures of this. I think I ended up with 24 photos. We went back, thanked the guard, and I had those photos edited and posted all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I didn't tag Great Island or anyone like that. I didn't want to rub it in too much and maybe get Debbie in trouble. But, believe me, I have great pleasure in sharing those photos as much as I can as a way of saying, yeah, you tried to keep me out, but eventually I got in. And Great Island, they are very strict with who they let out there. Here's another story. My mother, she was walking one time on Seagull Beach, which is neighboring to Great Island, and there's no fence blocking the property. There's a sign that says end of public beach, but if you're down by the low tide, you're not going to see. And she was just walking on the beach, and she crossed the line, and she didn't know it, and security came out and told her to turn around and go back, walking on the beach. She wasn't even thinking of going out to the lighthouse or bothering anyone, but that's how strict they are. It's very, very much off limits unless you live out there. So my buddy Steve, who I've mentioned several times on here, he's the one we go and we travel a lot and we take photos a lot. He's probably the best photographer that I've known. I've learned a ton from him, just his skill. He used to work for a newspaper and he's got a lot of knowledge. So he was, needless to say, a little jealous that I got to go out to Point Gammon Light. And I told him, I said I had to go at that time. I couldn't wait. And I'll never forget because he wanted to go out and get some photos of the lighthouse. So what we did was we left using his boat. We put it in the water at Bass River at Smuggler's Beach in West Yarmouth, which is right on the river. And if you head out just to the south of the lighthouse around Great Island, you can get some good photos. But there's a lot of big boulders just under the water that would damage a boat, hence the reason why they needed a lighthouse there. In order to get to the lighthouse, the southern end of Great Island from Smuggler's Beach, it's over 4.5 miles on the water. So I was prepared for a long time out there. The problem was we got about a half a mile out and the engine for his boat died and we ended up stuck. We were bobbing and bouncing and spinning around. And lucky me, I hadn't taken any Dramamine. I get seasick. We sat out there for like 45 minutes until his brother had to come and tow us back into port. Our attempt to go back out for me, and the first time for Steve to Point Gammon Light, was a failure. Hopefully later this year, when it gets warm in the summer, maybe we'll try it again, but that's up to him. He's the one with the boat, and I don't want to. The rocks out there are dangerous. But anyway you slice it, 5 years ago this month, I finally got out to see my white whale, Point Gammon Lighthouse. And that's thanks 100% to Debbie. So I wanted to give her a shout out and a thank you. And I love those photos. I'm always sharing them. I just did a couple weeks ago. That's my white whale. What's yours? What is the one spot, whether it's Cape Cod, anywhere in New England, anywhere in the world, that you're desperate to go and see? Let me know. Give me an email, christophersetterlund@gmail.com. Share with me the places you'd like to go. Maybe I've been there. Maybe I can help you get out there.